Greetings, my dears, in love and light. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Now, many people think this is quite an arrogant question. If there's no humans there to hear it, why would we question whether it makes a sound or not? That sounds a bit egotistical. Of course it makes a sound. Why does it have to revolve around us? What if there is an animal there and the animal heard it? Of course it makes a sound. It still makes a sound, right? But what is sound? Sound is actually vibrations in the air. They're air waves. They're the air vibrating. And when it goes into our ears and hits our eardrum, we then interpret it into sound. It sends electrical signals into the brain in which we interpret those electrical signals as the sound we hear. So these are air waves caused by kinetic energy. When the tree hits the ground, kinetic energy causing the air waves which hits our eardrums turns into electrical signals into the brain which we interpret. So, are we interpreting the sound correctly? Are we interpreting these vibrations in the air correctly? What if we interpret sound differently? Well, actually, there's a condition called chromesthesia, where people who listen to sound, they also experience a sensation of colour as well. So they perceive colours in the mind. So they are receiving a visual interpretation of sound. Now that's a different way of perceiving the sound, all right. So there's an example of how different beings can perceive sound differently. So therefore, once again, we ask, if this tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, it makes vibrations in the air, all right. It causes the air to vibrate. But is that sound? We just receive the vibrating air and we turn it into sound in our minds. So you might say, what if there's a recording device there and it records the sound? Okay, same thing. It's kinetic energy caused by the falling tree making vibrations in the air, which is then recorded by the recording device, which is electrical signals, which is then stored in its memory. It then plays the sound to us, which is vibrations in the air once again, which we hear and interpret. So it's the same thing. The tree falling is creating vibrations in the air, not technically sound, because the sound is created within our minds. You see, quantum physics gives us the observer problem, that matter can't be said to exist if there's not an observer. And this is due to the double slit experiment, which I've mentioned in many other videos, that matter, or reality, exists as waves of probability until there's an observer, and then it manifests as particles of matter. So if you think about it that way, there is no sound really. But if you consider that our reality is a giant, not computer program, but something far more advanced than that. I always talk about The Matrix, and I made a video on why the Matrix movie is relevant. And also I've made a video on, are we living in a simulation? Now when you think about creation in these terms as being one infinite being, one energetic, information-based being, and then mix that with the concept of it being some kind of simulation or program. So it's beyond our comprehension. It's not like a computer program, as simplistic as that. It's vast and intelligent, infinitely intelligent. And we exist within it. And we each of us are part of it. We're one with it. We're points of consciousness within it. And it's always running. And whether we're interacting with certain parts of it or not, the program is always running. The information is always ticking over. So in that woodland where the tree stands and where the tree falls, the information, the program is still running. The program runs, the tree stands, and then the program runs that it's time for the tree to fall, and then it falls. So whether there's someone there, or an animal, or a maggot, or a worm, or a human, or a bird there to observe it, it's still written in the program, written in creation, that that's what's happening. So next time someone comes along, they'll see that the tree has fallen, and they'll observe that information. Their consciousness will interact with a unified field and observe that information that the tree has fallen, and it will be interpreted in the mind, just like everything is interpreted within the mind. So potentially the sound would have been there to hear, yes, if the observer had been there to interact with that tree falling at that moment. The sound would have been there, and it would have been provided, well, the stimulus, the airways for us to interpret in our mind, in the consciousness. So the tree does exist in the creation. It does fall, and it does make airwaves. Yes, it's all written there in the program. It is happening, and whether we're there or not, it still occurs. But again, sound is just an interpretation in here. Really, there is no tree. There are no airwaves. There is no kinetic energy. We have no bodies. I know that sounds far out, but just like in the movie The Matrix, there is no spoon. It's all information in an energetic reality, well, information-based reality. And we assume that there's energy powering it, and it's all going on in our consciousness. When we see the tree, it's all being interpreted in here. It's our consciousness receiving that information that there is a tree there, and we interpret it as such. Now, these are quite far out concepts, and it can be a bit tricky to grasp, but it's worth remembering that our reality is a very valid and important one, and your experience is a very valid and important one, whether there is a tree or not. And also there's the other point, that if someone is suffering and there's no one there to see it, is it still happening? Yes, it is. And that's why turning a blind eye to people suffering and negativity in the world doesn't mean it's not happening. The program is still running within creation that suffering is happening. The program is still running within creation that there's many people, animals, beings going without, experiencing sadness and suffering. Whether there's someone there to observe it, whether there's someone there to hear it or not. Einstein said, "I can't accept quantum mechanics because I like to think the moon is still there even if I am not looking at it." But you can accept quantum mechanics because the moon is still there if you're not looking at it. It doesn't just manifest when you're looking at it. The code for the moon is still running there, whether you're looking at it or not. It's just when you look, you interpret the information and see the moon. When you look away, it's there running in the code. All of creation, all of the information is still there running, whether we're observing it or not. And there's probabilities of where things will end up, depending on what the program provides for us and what we decide, hence free will, because of all these probabilities. That's why all these probabilities exist, because there's free will for us to choose certain timelines. Whether we're observing or not, the program's still running. Everything's still happening. It's just whether we look at it, listen to it, and decode it or not. So don't forget to click subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to receive regular spiritual inspiration on your journey through life. Like and share also, because we're raising a mass vibration together. So go now in love and peace.